Welcome into the Saturday show, everybody. Hope you're doing well on this Saturday morning. Jay Catch here, Michelle Bodkin there. I got a fun show ahead, I think, today. This should be a pretty fun one. But Michelle, first off, how are you?
I'm doing well.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
You are. So this weekend's not as crazy as last weekend for you.
One less live event.
So
only one less.
So you were 5 for 5 last week. You got 4 this week, and you're halfway through, right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Today is kind of a breather day, and then we go Sunday, Monday.
Okay. Well, there you go. So Michelle doing great work. Obviously, you track all of her work at KSLSports.com. I'll encourage everybody to do that. But we got a lot to cover ahead on today's show. We also are going to be joined by one of your old. Do I call them coaching mates? What do I call them? Like from the Salt Lake Stallions, from your old friends, I guess.
It's interesting, yeah, because I have friends that were on the staff. I had friends in the front office.
Sure.
I had friends that were coaches. Obviously, some of the players. I guess in this case, this is an old coaching friend.
Okay. Well,
we'll go with that.
Well, and that's the thing about it is when you get into that world, it's not as big as most people think it is. There's connections everywhere. So once you get in there, you kind of like, okay, there's this little like kind of like spider web of being like, okay, that person knows this person, that person knows this person. Like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon in the coaching world, it's more like 2 degrees. It really feels like to anybody.
It's pretty wild. How connected everyone is. I think one of my favorite stories I mentioned. That I had the opportunity to meet Kevin Still and Mike Norvell.
Sure.
And tip a few back with them. But Kevin Still knows Kyle Whittingham.
Okay.
And he actually told me a story about how I think I looked it up once and I don't remember exact, but like early 2000s. So like 2000, 2001.
Okay.
Kevin Still gets the head coaching job at Baylor. And who did he want as his DC? This guy named Kyle Whittingham in Salt Lake that was doing some interesting things. Obviously, Kyle never took the job.
Sure.
But that was something that Kevin told me that he respects Kyle Whittingham. He really wanted Kyle Whittingham on his staff, but it didn't happen.
How different things might have been had he moved to Waco.
I know,
at some
right?
Point. Interesting. That's the thing about this is there's all kinds of crazy stories out there. There's the whole story, like not to get off on a tangent, but Bronco Mendenhall, before the players kind of went and said we want him as our head coach at BYU, he was set to move to UNLV. Like he was going to go be the defensive coordinator. He had verbally agreed to go be was it Mike Sanford at the time? I think it was.
Oh wow.
He was going to be Mike Sanford's defensive coordinator with UNLV.
Yeah. Like it's so crazy. And then the other crazy part of that story is one of the NFL scouts I know hit me up and somehow it came up that, oh yeah, like I'm having drinks with Kevin Still and he goes, Kevin Still, that guy was my coach when I was playing in the NFL. So it's so crazy how everybody somehow knows somebody from one point in time in their career in this industry.
That's awesome. All right, so we got plenty to discuss with Lamar Thomas. He'll be joining us. He obviously worked with the Salt Lake Stallions, has spent time as a player, as a coach in the pro ranks. So we'll get to that at 11 o'clock. We're also going to talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs. The divisional round kicks off today. We got 4 games that I'm very excited for. I can always watch NFL playoff action. There's no doubt about that. We'll also talk some college basketball. And, well, as of yesterday, MLB to SLC has gotten some real big traction that we need to talk about as well. But before we really dive into the nuts and bolts of today's show, Michelle, do you have a highlight of the week?
I think it was probably last night at the Huntsman Center. The women Utes really put on a show.
They did. Was it 20-point victory?
Exactly a 20-point victory over number 6 USC.
Well, and here's the thing: USC has been so good this year. Juju Watkins, obviously, kind of the breakout star for them, but Utah kept him in check.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. No one would neither confirm nor deny, but it seemed like Utah got under their skin very early and just did not let up. And I think they forced a lot of mistakes, especially early on. There were a couple of times where it was so obvious someone was out of position. There was just a big wide gap, and they were hitting their shots, and it was really, really crazy to see in the best way possible.
Well, that's always good. You got Jason Jones producing for us behind the glass today. Jason, what's up, dude?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing it. You got a highlight of the week for us?
Sure, of course. I always have a highlight of the week because it's I love all sports, so it's like a year-round thing for me.
I can understand that.
Yeah. The sad thing is, of course, though, is that I'm in the NBA. I'm a Wizards fan, so really no highlights there. And I'm also a Commanders fan.
You're forced to deal with Jordan Poole on a game-by-game basis.
Just kidding. Yeah. And sometimes you got to rebuild. So I guess that's what they're doing. So anyway, I'm also a big hockey fan. I'm a Caps fan, and they're just okay as well. So I take my highlights wherever I can find them.
Sure.
This week, I was very excited that the Commanders actually hired Adam Peters to be their general manager.
You're welcome, by the way.
Yes, no problem.
San Francisco 49ers.
And I figure if you're going to hire somebody to be your general manager, you might as well go to the 49ers franchise because they're obviously wildly successful all the time. So, take that guy or one of those guys and bring him over, and hopefully, things go well from there. So that's my highlight of the week, that the Commanders actually seem like they're maybe heading in the right direction. And, after the cloud of Daniel Snyder lifted, and, maybe things are actually going to turn around for them.
It'll be interesting. That's the one thing about that franchise is with new ownership, they obviously want change. They fired Ron Rivera as their head coach. Just a whole new regime change.
Sure, right.
And we'll see how that goes because the Commanders, they've got the legacy. Like, I'm old enough to remember like the heyday of what the old Redskins used to be. Now the Commanders. It's just think how far they've fallen under Daniel Snyder.
Yeah.
Gonna be a little bit of a climb to get out of it.
Please, Jack Kent Cook, bring him back, man. Bring him back from the dead.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. Highlight of my week is Monday, the NFL Super Wildcard weekend was wrapping up, and I was watching the games. My son comes over, and he's just watching the game with me. So I actually got two sons now, but my older son, and he's sitting there, and he looks at me. He's like, "Dad, I know what I want to be when I get older." I'm like, okay, what do you want to be? He's like, I want to do that. And he points at the TV. I'm like, you want to be a football player? He's like, I want to be a football player on TV. I'm like, go right on ahead, young man.
Well,
do your thing.
Let's do it.
Live your dream. Dad would be totally okay with that if that's how it works out. We'll see. He's got a long way to go.
I was going to say, you have him doing some flag football stuff, though.
He enjoys it. But, yeah, we'll see. But it was kind of cool. He's like, I want to do that. I'm like, okay, let's do it. Like, that's fun. So it's always fun. A lot of my stuff, like when you're a dad, most of your joy feels like either comes to Jason, this, it's sports or your kids. One of the two things.
Ain't that the truth?
So one of those things. All right, let's dive in. I want to start off today talking a little bit about the Utah Jazz. They just finished a 6-game homestand. Actually ended up being a 5-game homestand because of the sad situation with the Golden State Warriors. And they finished off the homestand with a loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. But typically, when you take an L, you're like, okay, what went wrong here, Michelle? Mm-hmm. That's the thing about this. Is in that game against the Thunder, Oklahoma City's been on this climb. They stockpiled assets. They had guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They got Chet Holmgren in there. Jalen Williams, for anybody who's a West Coast Conference basketball fan, I remember him from Santa Clara playing against BYU. They've got a really nice core of young players. Well, they have made their climb. They're now number 2 in the West right now, and the Jazz went toe-to-toe with them for most of this game. It started off rough. Like, it was turnover central for the Jazz, but they kind of ground their way back into it. They tied the game, I think, 3 or 4 times in the third quarter, then ultimately lose it 134-129. That was Thursday night. But coming out of this homestand, I'm actually more encouraged about the Jazz than I have been at any point this season, simply because of the fact that they've gone 15 of the last 20 games they have won, if I'm not mistaken. Since Colin Sexton's entered the starting lineup for the Jazz, I believe they are 15-4 in his 19 games he started this season. It feels like this is a team, as they head out on the road now, they got 6 games on the road upcoming here, that depending on how this road trip goes, it could set the tone for, okay, not just play-in team, they could be a play-off team. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we kind of touched on this last week, right? Like, it feels like they found the secret sauce at least with the group that they currently have.
Sure.
Now, is this going to be the end-all be-all group? Is this the complete and total vision for this team? I don't think so. I think there's still going to be some pieces moved around and trying to bring in and upgrade some talent.
Oh, yeah.
But it's nice to see that they didn't fold, which they could have. They could have just thrown their hands up and been like, This is just what this season's going to be.
The way this season started, absolutely.
But, I think they worked at it. And like I said, they've figured out something that works for this group. And I think, like you have to feel encouraged. I think this road trip is probably going to tell us a whole heck of a lot, especially coming off of a close loss like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see, how everybody responds and how they do now that they're not in the comfort of home anymore.
Well, and that's the thing about this is they have been enjoying this homestand. There's no doubt about it. Like they'd played really, really well. They'd won the 4 before that. Obviously, the Warriors game has been postponed to a later date. We'll find out when that's rescheduled. But then you lose to the Thunder. But then you open up tonight at Houston. Now, Houston's an interesting team in their own right because they've been down since the whole James Harden debacle went down, and they tried to retool it, and they have retooled it to a large degree. And I was reading a thing. Let's see, who's I reading? I have Mark Steinline. He does he's doing his own thing on Substack, and he was talking about like the most surprising teams to this point in the season. And he had the Jazz number 1. Actually, no, this is from the Athletic. It was the Jazz number 1, and then the Houston Rockets number 2. And he said, honestly, these two teams are supposed to be lottery teams. They still could end up that way. Mm-hmm. But the point made for both of them is both of them are playing better than anticipated. They've got young players. In the case of the Jazz, you look at Lowry Markkanen and you look at Colin Sexton. In the case of what the Rockets have going for them, you got Alperen Sengun and some of the other guys on that roster that are, okay, so now you open this road trip in Houston against the Rockets. That's a good start to this road trip because it's going to tell us, okay, as you mentioned, coming off a loss, how do you respond now? Because you've had the home crowd behind you now. Now you got to Houston. Let's see how you guys adapt to road life. The good news for the Jazz is right now with what's going on in the road trips of recent, they've gone 500 or they've actually held their own on the road recently. And that's good enough in the NBA. We all know that they're schedule bosses. That's what happens. Like you look at some games, you're like, yeah, they're probably not going to win that one. But you look at the road trip. So they go to Houston, to New Orleans. Okay, those are two pretty good tests to start this road trip off. But then, no offense, Jason, they go to the Washington Wizards.
That's a guaranteed win for the Jazz.
They go to Washington, they go to Charlotte, then they finish up in New York with Brooklyn and New York on back-to-back nights. Like, the start of the road trip looks more daunting, and then the back 4, you're like, okay, the middle 3 there, Washington, Charlotte, Brooklyn, you should take those 3. And then you finish it off against New York, who the Knicks on any given night are world beaters or look completely inept. It's weird with Tom Thibodeau running the ship there. I think 3-3 is very possible here, and it might start off with 2 losses, win 3, and then lose the finale.
And you know what? I think you got to be happy about that. We talked about how getting road wins in college is hard. It's every bit as hard in the NBA too. Yeah. And especially the way the NBA does it, because it's not just like a road game and then you come back home. Yeah. It's like several in a row. And so you're traveling from one city to another city. Even like college isn't quite like that.
Well, they left yesterday, so they open tonight in Houston. So Saturday, January 20th, they start the road trip. Michelle, they are on the road until Tuesday, January 30th. They got a full 10, 11 days on the road. Then they come back home. You have the 1 day in between on January 31st, and then you're right back in a 3-game homestand against Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Oklahoma City. Like there's a good run coming up here for the Jazz, and it's gonna, in many ways, it's gonna tell us, okay, how good is this team really? Because you go on that road trip. Obviously, you're battling against all the different things, the road weariness and everything. And by the time they do get to New York in a 6-game on 11 days on the road, you're like, okay, can we get home yet? Like that you got to battle through that, and then you have a really stiff 3-game test because I'm telling you, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Oklahoma City, that's a 3-game set of home games that are like, okay, well, here's some of the best teams in the league. You're coming home, you're tired. Can you muster enough strength to get through the next 2 to 3 weeks? Because if you do, let's say they go, 6-3 in that. Okay, that's a team that is a bona fide, looks like play-in/playoff team. Now, if you go like 3-6. Storyline may be, okay, you're going to finish in the bottom half of the lottery.
Yeah. It's going to be something to watch for sure. And I think something to keep in mind, while we have seen a lot of improvement from this team, they're not the best team in the league, not by a long stretch.
I think Oklahoma City showed that because Oklahoma City and Minnesota are jockeying 1-2 at the top of the West right now. And they are both teams that are ahead on their timelines versus what the Jazz have been, which, okay, it happens. But I think the one thing that you can take some confidence in if you're a Jazz fan out there is, okay, this season started off awful. Yeah. It looked like, okay, hey, race to the bottom. Yeah. And now Detroit and San Antonio and Washington, to a degree, have kind of led the way in that race to the bottom. But it felt like the Jazz were going to be in that mix. Mm-hmm. The nice part, as you kind of pointed out earlier on, is Will Hardy and the brain trust of the Jazz retooled everything. They retooled the offense. They've been mixing and matching lineups. They moved Walker Kessler to the bench because it actually worked better to have him on the bench, even though he looks like a foundational piece for you guys, for the team moving forward. So I'm actually appreciative that, as you mentioned, they didn't just kind of throw in the towel and say, all right, well, whatever, this is the year we're going to have. They've been willing to kind of redo some things, retool things, and it's benefited them, and now they're one of the hottest teams in the NBA.
Well, and I think... And I could be wrong. Like, I have no idea. I don't sit in those meetings.
Very few people do.
They don't consult with me on this. But I think they're still in a place where they really kind of have to see what they have in order to know what they still want to go get. And you can't really do that if you mail it in. Uh-huh. And you also really kind of can't do that if you're, like, taking off and doing, like, you kind of have to see both sides of it. And so I think that's really kind of what's happening here.
Well, and that is a very good point, because Danny Ainge has that nickname, Trader Danny. He's going to, and by the way, if you think he's not listening to trade overtures right now, like, you're up in the night. This is a guy who takes every phone call. Now, does he laugh a lot of those guys off the phone and like, yeah, that's cute, thanks for calling, and click, like, there's probably a lot of that.
Probably.
But he's not going to be afraid. If he sees a move out there on the quote-unquote chessboard, he's like, yeah, that's what we need, he'll pull the trigger on it. The other thing about this, and Steve Cleveland mentioned this earlier this week with DJ and PK, and I'm sure that many other guests have pointed this out, they've assembled a really, really nice war chest of assets. We're talking draft picks, and they along with the Oklahoma City Thunder, feel like they own the NBA draft in the back half of this next decade. Like, they 2 and 3 picks annually from 2025 on. And that's going to be attractive to different teams out there, because there may be teams that say, okay, you know what, we're blowing it up. Like what the Jazz did 18 months ago, and completely say, you know what, we hit our ceiling here as a team. We're going to completely – Michelle just lost her shoe in the studio. That's awesome.
No. There were like pebbles in it.
There you go.
They like kicked up. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, but that was kind of funny. But the thing is, the Jazz blew it up 18 months ago and have rebuilt it on the fly here. There are going to be teams that are going to want to blow it up in the relatively near future.
Yeah.
And that's when Danny Ainge, with everything that he's assembled, can swoop in and say, okay, yeah, I want that guy from you guys. What will it take? And it's like, all right, here's a couple of picks, and on we go. That's the fun part. The Jazz are competitive right now, but they're not top echelon of the NBA. That's very clear. They're not Boston. They're not Denver. They're not Oklahoma City. But you can see the trajectory they're taking right now.
Mm-hmm.
Their pieces, they're still going to be added, and guys moved off this roster and guys brought in. But it feels like as long as they remain competitive like this while they continue to build, that's maybe the best scenario to be in if you're the Utah Jazz, where you're not completely bottoming out like the Detroit Pistons, because you feel for the Pistons fans.
Yeah.
They have that Wingstop deal, and I think they've cashed in on it twice this season.
Ugh.
I think home games, if they win, you get like free wings from Wingstop. They have 2 home wins on the season. They're 4-30, whatever they are now.
Ugh.
So at least it's not that bad.
Yeah. And I think this is personally why I can't do the whole NBA thing, like, is because there is the tanking thing.
Oh, there is.
But I think that's a hard thing that teams and management and GMs need to balance.
Oh, yeah.
And not very many of them are good at it. And I think the Jazz are at least trying to hit that balance of, we need to be bad enough that we can continue to kind of fix things and bring the people and the pieces in that we really need in order to be as good as we want to be. But we can't be so bad that we totally turn off our fan base and they hate us and they don't want to show up and they don't want to spend money and they won't support the product.
Well, and I'm going to echo something that I heard on a radio show earlier this week. It was a national show, and they were talking about Bill Belichick when he left New England now. And obviously, he's looking for a new gig. Apparently, he had a second interview with the Atlanta Falcons. But he's been judge, jury, and executioner in the NFL. He's been the guy who has the final say on personnel for the Patriots. He's been the head coach. Like, he has had the final say. And the point the person was making, and I wish I could remember who it was, but they were saying that there's a reason why there's a separation of front office executives and coaches. Mm-hmm. They have to have 2 different views. front office, you have to have the long view. You have to have the 30,000 foot. We're looking years down the line at what the roster is going to look like, how much money we're allocating to X positions. Coaches, it's the here and now. Mm-hmm. It's like day to day, if not month by month. Like we're in the here and now. So that's the thing about it is Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck in the front office for the Utah Jazz, they've got more of the vision. Okay, 2025, we've got this, and they're looking beyond that. Whereas Will Hardy and his staff, well, they're all right. Game plan tonight for Houston's this. Like they're on. So there's that separation that has to exist. And the person was saying that Bill Belichick was capable of doing both of those things simultaneously, which is very few people can do that because too often the coaches are so. All right, I got to do what I got to do now. That they kind of they would rather. I'm trying to say it. They're trying to like forsake the future for getting the W here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which Bill Belichick, to his credit, by the way, did 6 Super Bowl titles and 24. Great run, but that's the thing I think the Jazz are going with here is like, okay, Will Hardy knows like I'm focusing on the here and now. I'm going to retool things in the moment. I'm going to keep them competitive. Whereas, to your point, Danny Ainge is out there. All right, okay. Got these pieces here, but that piece there, like he's looking at it, okay, down the line. And I think it's a nice blend right now because you're right. You don't want to turn off the fan base. If I'm a Detroit Pistons fan, I'm like, yeah, screw the Pistons. I'm all in on the Lions over here.
Oh, completely.
When's Tigers season start up? Like that's what a Detroit sports fan is dealing with right now. It's probably the same thing in the nation's capital for you as a fan, Jason. You're probably looking, okay, when's national season start right now?
Yeah, well, yeah. Or, I mean, I'm a Caps fan, so I got that.
We still got Ovi still doing his thing.
But I will tell you this. Okay. This is why I'm a fan of all of the sports that I am. Because could you imagine being a Commanders fan and only a Commanders fan at the beginning of the football season? I'm 4 games in, and I'm already like, oh, great. Now I get to wait another year before I can root for anything.
Well, that's the thing. I go back to the Detroit thing. They opened the season with a home win and didn't win again until the end of December. Like that, they went 0 for the month of November and nearly the 0 for the month of December.
Oof.
That's brutal.
Yeah. And
like the players, the coaches, the front office, like the owners, everybody's like, ooh. Like you're just kind of meandering your way through it. So we'll see how the Jazz do on this road trip. Because I really do feel like, okay, if you can go 3-3 here in this, and if heck you go 4-2, 5-1 would be incredible. But I think a lot of what we're going to learn about this team is like how much of a push are they truly going to make will come out of this next 2 and 3 week stretch because that's kind of the lead up to the NBA trade deadline, which Danny Ainge, I think it's February 8th is when that goes down. Then you have the All-Star break, and then after that, it's okay. After that, teams that are going to start pushing hard. Other teams are like, okay, we're going to pull the ripcord a little bit, what the Jazz did last year.
Yeah.
That's when that happens. So this next 2, 3, 4 weeks, very, very important for what the rest of the Jazz season is going to look like.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Stay tuned.
We will come back on the other side. We've mentioned the NFL. I want to talk about the divisional round of the playoffs. I think we got 4 very, very good games, some fresh blood, some old school slobber knocker type rivalries. Michelle and I are on opposite sides of a game tonight.
Yeah.
We'll get to all that next. This is the Saturday Show right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday Show, everybody. Hope you're doing well on this Saturday morning. Michelle Bodkin, Jay Catch along for the ride. Got some California love going right now. And now, when it comes to California love, that means the San Francisco 49ers, obviously. Come on now. Let's be real.
Clearly.
The Los Angeles Rams are out of the playoffs here. We're going to talk about some NFL playoffs here. But big weekend. It's the divisional round. This is, some people call it the best weekend of NFL playoff football because you have 4 games. These are considered to be the best 8 of the playoffs because wildcard weekend can sometimes weed out, okay, a little bit of a paper tiger over there. I feel like wildcard weekend under-delivered.
Oh, you thought?
Well, there were 4 blowouts. It was like, okay. And
you know what? The problem is that the only one I actually was able to catch was that Lions-Rams one. That was a legit good game.
That was the best game. But no offense to anybody else, that was the best game of the weekend. And so the thing about it is it sets up now where you've got double headers today and tomorrow, and then you're going to have, I think, some really, really fun matchups. And then the teams that advance, they got legit Super Bowl aspirations. You win next week, you're playing in the Super Bowl. You're playing for all the marbles, and that's the fun part about it. But let's start off talking just kind of I guess we'll go in chronological order here. We have the Texans against the Ravens. Now, okay, I don't know if you saw this on social media this morning. So have you heard about the S2 cognition test? It's supposed to be like the next evolution of the Wonderlic at like the NFL Combine.
Okay.
So let me explain for a moment here. C.J. Stroud last year, when he was I
remember all that. Yeah.
They claimed he had like one of the lowest scores ever on this S2 cognition test. This morning, literally this morning, or that maybe story came out overnight, is that the owners of that S2 cognition test have come out now we're almost a year removed from it, saying that his score was never supposed to be released because obviously they try and keep him private, but it got out. And they're saying that his score was one of the ones in their testing patterns that could have been deemed invalid. Okay, guys, here's the thing. You're trying to cover your tracks so that people aren't ripping you guys because this kid has been awesome.
Yeah.
It's sad because it's such a quarterback-driven league that it feels like he's going to get Offensive Rookie of the Year, whereas Puka Nacua set records over here. And here in Salt Lake, we're going to be like, hey, Puka should be Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Give us Puka.
But he's a quarterback-driven league. He's probably going to win it. It feels like it's like this S2 corporation is probably getting some heat, and it's like, hey, whoa, hey, it might have been invalid. It's like, okay, guys, whatever. Move on. But this is a really good quarterback matchup. Stroud versus Lamar Jackson for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, you also have two teams who have really got a defensive identity. I really like what the Ravens have done. I don't know if you read the story that Kyle Van Noy's had this career renaissance with Baltimore,
I've seen that.
career high in sacks this year, and he's become just this pure pass rush threat, and that's what Kyle's really good at. He gets after the quarterback, so good for him. But then the Texans under DeMeco Ryans, trust me, as a 49ers fan, I wish DeMeco Ryans was still in San Francisco coordinating our defense. He's made that Texans team stingy on D. I'm looking forward to this one.
I love a good defensive battle. I think I've been very on the record as far as that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a defense girl. And I have to say, like, the Ravens were one of the teams that growing up I followed and watched a lot with Ed Reed.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, Ray Lewis.
Lewis, yeah.
I loved those teams.
Haloti Ngata up in the middle.
Yes. And I mean offensive side of the ball, but Dennis Pitta, like those teams, Paul Kruger, like those teams were so fun to watch. Loved the Ravens in that era. I love seeing them kind of getting back to that identity. And there's a lot of locals on that team. So I am all on board the Ravens train. Let's go.
Well, and it's the interesting circumstance because the other game is the Packers 49ers. And so the Niners and the Ravens have had that week off. They were the number 1 seed. They get the bye. I am curious how both Baltimore and San Francisco handled the week off, not playing, sitting home, watching. We had Kyle Shanahan earlier this week saying that in the second quarter of the Packers game against the Cowboys, he started getting ready for the Packers, and for good reason, because they absolutely kicked Dallas's rear end up and down the field.
Shocking.
I know. Way to go, Dallas. And oh, by the way, Mike McCarthy's coming back for another year. We're going to get it right this time.
Sure.
No, you're not.
As long as Jerry Jones is running that operation, you will never get anything right. And that's just what it is.
It's so funny. Mike McCarthy, I don't know if you guys heard the clip this week. He's like, I know how to win. Great.
I mean, he does, but again, Jerry Jones is his boss.
And we got Jason Cole, who writes for the 33rdteam.com. He's been a long-time NFL writer. He came on with DJ and PK this week, and he's like, here's the thing. Mike McCarthy is the perfect coach for the Dallas Cowboys. He lets Jerry Jones be the center of attention, which Jerry Jones wants to be.
Yes, sir.
Jerry Jones has press conferences with the media after that game against the Packers. He's in the locker room talking to the media. You know, all these players and coaches are milling around, which those are the people that, you'd think
normally would
be talking. But here's Jerry Jones holding court in the middle of the Dallas Cowboys locker room.
He's larger than life, man.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, he doesn't stay in the hotel with all the rest of the teams for the combine.
Yeah.
He parks a bus outside of the damn hotel.
Yeah.
Like,
he's still the GM. He's 80 years old.
he's crazy.
Jerry's living the dream that a lot of us would think we could pull off. And they had a really good team. Let's be honest. Dallas was good. But when it comes to playoff time, the Dallas Cowboys, they just crumble. So anyways, that's beside the point.
Jerry Jones tangent.
Whatever, Jerry. Do your thing, man. But it's going to be interesting how the Niners and the Ravens handle this because the Texans, major upstarts. Like, last year, the Texans were awful.
Yeah.
You get a good quarterback, you get a good coach, you get a good defensive piece in Will Anderson, obviously coming in from Alabama to kind of bolster the pass rush, and suddenly the Texans are relevant and they're a threat. Meanwhile, the Packers, similar circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Love came on super strong in the back half of the season. Obviously, all of us here locally pay attention to him. He's a Utah State kid, and it's fun to see that. But these two quote-unquote upstarts, how are they going to handle going up against the number one seeds? Because the Niners and the Ravens separated themselves from the rest of their divisions, or leagues, I should say, their conferences. And there's a whole play versus rest situation here.
Yeah.
But these are the two elite teams of the regular season. How do these two younger teams do it? Because the Packers are the youngest team on average age in the league right now. I think it's like 25.3 years old. Jason, do you remember seeing that stat?
Yeah, in fact, they're the fourth youngest team ever to start a playoff game.
Yeah, that's what it was. Okay.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
They've got a core of guys, and obviously as that core ages, there are going to be guys that get moved because it's just the NFL. It's a salary cap league. It's what it is. But Texans in a similar circumstance, really young, upstart. It's kind of the whole idea of, okay, elite regular season team gets the week off, is quote unquote able to get healthy, and then these other teams that are okay. How much momentum are they carrying over into this? I'm looking forward to this. What do you make of the Niner? Either one of these games?
I mean, that's the funny thing too. I identify as a Packers fan.
Sure.
My fandom has cooled off. Just because,
as it does in this industry.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, I get excited when they're really good because that's my childhood team, but I'm much more interested in where all the locals are,
Sure,
and stuff, and like guys that I covered. So it's very different now than what it used to be. Niners are also a team that I grew up really liking.
it was hard to ignore when you grow up here in Utah with the Niners.
Yeah. So that's a game that either way, I'm kind of happy and good with that. Those are two teams I kind of grew up cheering for, and both have those local connections.
I always, I'm similar to you. The Niners were my team growing up, but Brett Favre, I just had this man crush on that dude as a player, and now he's
I know,
off
such
the field,
a disgrace.
A little bit different
Such a
story on that.
disgrace.
But on the field, the dude was just
Yes.
gunslinger personified. And the thing about it is, so last night I was watching the Polynesian Bowl, watching a lot of the local high school guys who have enrolled in college or will be going. Guys like Falata Satuala were playing, and I think Tate Nakua. There were like 10 guys. With Isaac Wilson. By the way, Isaac started out super, super hot, and then his entire team like melted down. It was like turnover central.
That's kind of what I gathered. Unfortunate,
but he wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
It was like everybody on that team was like, "Here, have ball, give." Like,
I don't want to touch that. You touch it.
But anyways, that game gets over, and they kind of do their post game thing. And you know what kicks on the NFL Network right afterwards? A replay of the divisional round between the Packers and the 49ers from 2021.
That's
and
crazy.
Me being the football junkie I am, I sat there for an additional 30 minutes when I should have been sleeping with my sleeping son sitting next, and I'm just like, you know what? This is awesome because it's the Packers in their home uniforms, that the green and gold, the Niners in their road whites with the gold. It's just like, you know what? This is what I grew up with. So that's what I'm looking forward to tonight. Is that this is the Packers and the Niners have got a really strong history, and the crazy thing is they never met in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, until '96.
Oh wow!
But they've had in the last 30-ish years, give or take, they've had a lot of classic matchups, and these are two teams that have got a lot of tradition and should be cap off a really fun Saturday. But then we get what I think might be on paper, might be the least recognized matchup tomorrow. It's in the NFC as well. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Detroit Lions. What?
Yeah.
Like, Detroit is going insane right now. They got their first playoff win. You watched that game last week.
I did watch that game.
The crowd inside Ford Field was going absolutely bananas, and for good reason. They hadn't won a playoff game in 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, they've got a team that is pretty good. But then you had Tampa Bay over here, similar circumstance to the Packers and the Texans. They won, was it 7 of 8 coming into the playoffs? Baker Mayfield is leading the way now. This should be fun because one of those two teams is playing for a Super Bowl berth next week.
Yeah. I'm all in on the Lions. I just think it's a cool story. I love the city of Detroit. I've only been there once, but we really explored it when we were there. I would love to go back someday. I had the best time. I just think the vibes are so cool. I know everybody says it's like a dump and it's run down. I loved Detroit.
Okay.
I'm all about Motown, the Motor City.
Sure, yeah.
Like love the entire vibe of that. So I'm all in on the Lions for this one.
It's fun to see because I think you and I are kind of a similar situation. It's like you're a Packers fan, I'm a Niners fan, but I like the NFL. I just think NFL football, I can watch any game, it feels like these days, and enjoy it. But this, if you're the lay NFL fan, this is awesome because these are two teams. Now, the Buccaneers with Tom Brady, they won that Super Bowl not that long ago. But when Brady left, it was like, all right,
okay, back to the norm.
Yeah, like back into the back of the pack for you guys. But the nice part is Baker Mayfield has come in, Todd Bowles. They put together a pretty decent squad. Now, I think they got some flaws to them, but this is still fun to see them doing their thing because they are going up against a fellow upstart in Detroit. And I don't think anybody, no offense to anybody who's a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, I have an uncle who's a big-time Buccaneers fan.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to call him today and say, sorry, Uncle Bart, but it's all about the Lions. Like the storyline, the lovable losers, the Lions, they haven't won anything for decades. Come on, I want Niners-Lions for the NFC Championship, and that would be a ton of fun, but we'll see.
Then who are you going to root for?
Oh, Niners, come on.
Oh, well, okay.
It's still my team. But,
okay.
But
I figured I'd had to check.
The Detroit story, it's not over yet.
Yeah.
It's far from over, because Dan Campbell, by the way.
That is such a great story.
What a stud.
That's such a great story within a great story.
I want to coach that team. Why? I want to go win there. Nobody wins there, Dan, but he's proven he can. Cool, good for him.
Yeah.
Now, the final game, we'll get to this real quick, is the best burgeoning rivalry, I think, in the AFC. You got the Kansas City Chiefs going to the Buffalo Bills. Now, if Kadarius Toney hadn't lined up off sides, this is the Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs. That's how crazy one play could have changed this completely. But for the first time in his career, you're going to have Patrick Mahomes starting a road playoff game. He's played at home the entire way so far in his career.
Be interesting to see how he handles that. Just because I'm so into like the new blood thing, like I was all in on Kansas City when they kind of first rose up, but they've done it a couple of times.
They had 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years.
Let's go Buffalo Bills. And I love that Dalton Kincaid is becoming such a thing. Like.
So
incredible.
We had Vic Carucci, works up there in Buffalo, on yesterday with DJ and PK. And we had him on, this is probably towards the start of the season. And I remember PK asked a question, hey, so what's kind of been the vibe around Dalton Kincaid? And Vic couldn't have been, no offense to him, more dismissive of. He's like, he's a rookie tight end. We'll see. I don't know. He's like, there's promise there, but we'll see what he can do. And this is before Dalton really had come on and done his thing. And then we had him on yesterday because we just want to get a feel for how he's like, guys, I think I joined you last time and I was kind of down on Dalton Kincaid. I was wrong. He's like, this kid has been everything they expect him to be. I thought it was too high in the draft to be taking a tight end when they took him. I don't know why they moved up to get him, but he has proven to be a weapon that they needed in this offense. And you're right. It's a fun story because it's a local connection. Obviously, him having done what he did at the University of Utah. This should be fun. And by the way, the Chiefs are going to be like, hey, this feels like spring after they played in negative 27 degrees. I think the temperature, let's see, the forecast is, AccuWeather says 20 degrees in Buffalo tomorrow and clear. Oh, so yeah, it's gonna be like a spring day for the Kansas.
Heat wave,
yeah, exactly.
Yes, compared to last week.
Don't break a sweat.
Yeah, well, if you don't break a sweat instead of breaking a helmet like Patrick Mahomes.
That was crazy.
And
the fact that they didn't catch that too, I was like, I'm not an expert, but I kind of don't think it's safe for him to continue playing with that.
It's like, get him checked out, guys. He just took a helmet shot and it literally broke his helmet. But nonetheless, these 4 games look like they all have intrigue to them. I'm hoping we don't get blowouts like we did last week. I'm hoping we get actually good games, but the storylines for all 8 of these teams are really, really fun. And I think this is what the NFL wants, Michelle. They want, when you go into the division round, all 8 of these teams have big fan bases who are behind them, great storylines, and it just sets up for, by the way, the Leviathan that is the NFL and TV ratings, it continues because they have all the storylines coming together.
Well, and I think the parody's nice. I think I think it's nice to see a little bit of a mix-up. Like, there's a couple of, like, the usual suspects that have been in it the last little bit, but it's also nice to see some of the kind of middling teams that
Yes.
sometimes are in it, but sometimes aren't in it, kind of in this one. And it's also cool to see some of these teams that we've basically never seen in this position in the mix. So I'm hoping that we get a nice little shakeup here and some good games.
Yeah, we'll see. The other thing about this, if you're the Texans, the NFL loves that story because they went from like worst to first overnight.
Gosh, yeah.
That's what the NFL loves, is that you have that, like, see, we proved it. In a year, you can go from bottom of the barrel and you're in the playoffs and you're playing.
Yeah.
It exists, and that's what the NFL wants. They want parity. They want all 32 teams as on an even playing field as possible. Now, that's never going to exist in reality, but they're going to do their absolute darndest to make it happen.
I mean, the nice thing is it's so much more cyclical than college football is.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
it takes a lot for a newcomer to kind of break in, and usually it's like a one-time deal, and then they're back to where they came from.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, and you really do. You see some college football teams that will kind of rise up, and they go right back. There's that top tier, though, that kind of just stays.
It's always there.
Yeah.
Always there. So, and I think that's what makes a story like the University of Utah so interesting is that
they're knocking on the door.
Everybody keeps waiting for them to be the fluke, and yet they kind of keep inching their way.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating because that doesn't happen in college football very often.
The next step for Utah, kick down the bloody door. That's the next step. Is you're right there on the cusp. Just knock it down and get through. That's next year could be that year. We'll see. It'll be kind of fun. We got plenty of offseason to discuss all that, no doubt. All right, we will come back on the other side. We'll get to technical fouls coming up in the 11 o'clock hour. Lamar Thomas worked with the Salt Lake Stallions, worked in college football, former NFL player in his own right. We'll talk all things football with him. That's coming up next right here on The Saturday Show.
If you're coming from the street with dirty shoes on your feet, that's a technical foul. If you switch the radio to some modern music show, that's a technical foul. If you touch the thermostat,
You'll get hit with a bat.
'cause that's a technical foul.
You will feel my wrath.
That's a technical foul.
Personal foul, 69, offense. He was giving them the business.
A technical foul.
Welcome back to the Saturday Show, everybody. Hope you're doing well on this Saturday morning. As you heard, it's time now for technical fouls. We talk about some of the more offbeat and just downright stupid things in sports, and just it never disappoints. So I'm gonna have you start off this week, Michelle. What do you got for us?
You know, it's so enjoyable seeing Alabama fans getting a taste of reality. Like, I mean, just unreal.
They lose Nick Saban, and
You lose Nick Saban, and all your guys are heading out the door, and all of a sudden there's this realization that there's a problem with the transfer portal and how things work and how much it sucks and all the tampering. And I was like, that's really kind of rich coming from a team that tried to lure away a player from the University of Utah. Very, very public knowledge at this point. Actually, we just barely talked about him. Dalton Kincaid
was offered $1 million to go play
for Alabama. And now the shoe's on the other foot, and they don't like it. Kind of funny. I saw a tweet yesterday that said they hired Kalen DeBoer, and now the players are out the door.
Oh, hey. There we go. Nice rim shot. There we go. I like that. But that's the thing about it is Alabama, yes, they are kind of getting the, hey, what reality exists in college football? But that's when there were people that out this week saying that Nick Saban saw the trajectory and is like, you know what? I'm out. I don't want to deal with this. But regardless, you're right. It is kind of like sweet justice in a way to see Alabama fans like, hold on, why is that guy, like Caleb Downs, for example, he leads Alabama in tackles. He's the first freshman since at least 1970 to do that. Looks like future superstar. And as soon as he's out the door. Julian Sayin, I believe is how you say his name. There's 5-star freshman quarterback. He's like, I'm not playing for Kalen, but I committed it out to Nick Saban. I'm out. Welcome to reality, Alabama. This is how the rest of the college football universe feels.
Yeah. So funny.
Unless you're an Ohio State fan. All right, Jason, what do you got?
Okay, so as you know, I am a huge baseball fan, probably bigger than anyone in Utah. So
PK would give you a run for your money.
He might, and Steve Klauke might as well. Although Steve Klauke and I have had many a good baseball conversations. So, but I have to. My technical foul has to go to Wander Franco.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with the Wander Franco story, you're probably going to want to look it up. I'm not going to delve into it too much, but I don't care what culture you're in. If you're 21 and you're having relations with a 14-year-old, that is not okay.
Let's not do that.
And when you're paying money to her and to her mother, and her mother is demanding more, the whole situation is horrible. It's icky. It's horrible. And I don't care, again, what culture you're from. That is not okay. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
And you should know better. Yeah, you should know better. I mean, someone would make an argument that you're still a child at 21. We've seen lots of 21-year-olds make some really stupid decisions, but that doesn't matter. You got to have a better head on your shoulders than that if you're Wando Franco. You can't. This
guy has hundreds of millions of dollars potentially in his future that hang on this one awful decision. What just happened?
We just lost the entire computer system. So there we go. So that's real fun. But anyway, so and so my technical foul is Wander Franco. Ugh. I mean, it just flat out there's nothing okay with what he did. Yeah. Period.
No, you're right. There's absolutely no doubt about that. All right, mine real quick. We're gonna go back to the college football realm. Now, Texas thinks that they are like God's gift to collegiate sports. And so Rodney Terry, their head coach, they lost to UCF Wednesday night in Big 12 basketball action. UCF players, as Oklahoma players and some Kansas players in years past, did the horns down gesture in celebration after the game. Rodney Terry, I don't know if you guys saw this, in the post-game handshake line you can see him mouth, "Don't do that, bleep. That's classless." Blah, blah, blah. And 30 minutes later, he's doing post-game, and he says this: "When you do those kind of things, it looks very classless and also looks like you were just hoping to win. We never go into games trying to hope to win. We go into games expecting to win. So we don't act like that. We expect to win. We don't jump up and down and act like we won the national championship. We sure don't step on anybody's home court and act crazy and try to show them up in any way. We don't do that."
It's just a hand signal. Get over it,
Oh,
man.
my gosh. Texas's ability to be irrationally upset about a hand gesture knows no bounds.
So, you're acting like they dug up your floorboards and hauled them out of the build. I don't know. That's a weird thing to get all upset about.
He finished off with this: "You guys won. Hey, we shake your hand and tip our hat to you, but we're not going to let you act that way in our building. You're not going to put your horns down and do all that nonsense."
Sit down and shut up.
Oh my gosh, bro. Cool it. And here's the thing. I did a podcast with some Texas Tech guys this week because BYU takes on Texas Tech today, and they said, "Hey Jake, can you promise us one thing for BYU fans?" I'm like, "What?" They're like, "When BYU plays Texas, if they beat them, will they do the horns down for us too?" And I'm like, "I can't guarantee it, but it would not surprise me in the least." It's just,
and that's just kind of when you react that way, people are gonna.
It's gonna happen more.
It's gonna happen more, because it's petulant and childish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever.
So, way to go, Texas. Grow up and fun times. All right, that's technical fouls. We will come back on the other side. We're going to be joined by Lamar Thomas, the former Miami everything, by the way. Miami Hurricane, Miami Dolphin, went to high school in that area, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to have him join us next. Michelle knows him from their time with the Salt Lake Stallions together. Get some memories of that. We'll maybe talk some NFL playoffs with him, get his perspective on how things are going in the pro ranks. We'll get to all that next. This is the Saturday Show right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Okay, welcome back into the Saturday Show. I'm Michelle Bodkin. Of course, I'm with Jake Hatch, and we have a very special guest coming on now. I know him from my Salt Lake Stallions days, but I think listeners might know him a little bit better from his days at Miami with Dennis Erickson. Please welcome in Lamar Thomas.
Good morning. Good morning. How you doing?
I am doing so well. It's been a minute.
Oh, it's been an hour, maybe two.
Well,
how you doing?
I am doing so well. Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking some time out to come chat with us. Let's get this rolling. First of all, it was crazy after everything shut down with the Stallions. I watched the 30 for 30 on the U, And I was like, oh my gosh, I know that guy. I know that guy. I know that guy. I've just spent like 6 months with these people. You know, what was it like back in the day with Dennis Erickson playing for those Miami teams?
It was, let's see, what's the best way to describe it? A lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Coach Erickson is the ultimate players coach. And we won a lot of games. We worked hard now. I wish that was the one thing the 30 for 30 would have told more of how hard we worked. And it made Saturdays a lot easier. But Dennis, what a great man, great mentor. I mean, his door was always open. Anything, you weren't afraid to approach him. And, you know, I had the difference between Jimmy Johnson, who recruited me, and Dennis, who came in and carried the torch. And then I got to coach with Jimmy. He coached me at the Miami Dolphins, and then I got to do it again with Dennis as far as being a coach on his staff. Two different people, two different styles, but it was a lot of fun there at the University of Miami. You know, it's always great when you're winning games. I think we lost maybe 4 or 5 games my whole college career. Never lost a game at home. I think we won 2 national championships. It was just a great time to be in South Florida.
Speaking of one of those losses, I remember so specifically sitting around and you told me this story about coming to Provo and losing to BYU in Provo, and that you still had PTSD about that.
Oh, man. You know, that BYU game, mixed memories, mixed feelings, emotions. You know, we lost that game. It was the opening game of the season. We were number 1 in the country. We didn't take them lightly, but they had a better game plan. They executed better. We turned the ball over too much. It actually was my first real big appearance. I think maybe I had 10 or 11 catches. I just remember being out there. We couldn't breathe. I also was thinking, you know, the Mormons, I'd heard about Mormon people being religion, but some of the stuff that was coming out of their mouths during that game was incredible. And I also remember it being guys lining up across from me that looked like they had families. So they were a little older, a little more seasoned, as we might say. But it was a great experience. They had a better game plan. And Ty Detmer, I think that night, won the Heisman Trophy because there was nothing he could do wrong that day. I mean, he even left the field with a bloodied chin. It was a great game for BYU. I know out there they still talk about it, and it was a big game in their history of their program.
Now, Lamar, just a little background. Michelle obviously covers Utah heavily for our radio station and our website. I do a lot of BYU coverage on the other side, so we're kind of on both sides of this rivalry. And I can tell you, my parents were in the stands that night watching that game, and my dad is a huge college football fan just in general.
Right.
And he said, I've never gone into a game expecting one outcome and getting something completely different. What do you mean by that? He expected Miami to come into Provo, and this is the number 1 team in the country. I just won the national championship the year before, if I'm not mistaken. He's like, we were expecting, and then he mentioned Ty Detmer's out there looking like Pee Wee Herman out there running around, and he's just carving Miami up, and it leads BYU to that victory. And it's one of those all-time memories. You said it's still talked about here. I'm sure it's still talked about in circles with Miami, and it's one of those all-time great games that'll never be forgotten.
No. We don't talk about that game.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
No. It is forgotten over here.
Yeah, and so Lamar, I also wanted to ask you, with regards to your time at Miami, there have been so many storylines in this day and age of college football, and I remember watching that 30 for 30, and Howard Schnellenberger talked about the fact they wanted to draw that line across South Florida, and there was nobody leaving South Florida. They're all going to go to Miami, and to Jimmy Johnson's credit, Dennis Erickson's credit, all those coaches, they did a really good job keeping that talent home there at Miami. How different is it in this day and age now? Because it feels like there are a ton of guys from South Florida that end up all over the country, but it's the same thing across the entire United States.
Oh, it's very different now. You can't keep them all. You know, you can't keep them all. You just try to see if you can get the best ones. I mean, but over the years, other programs have been able to come in and get guys that are good players, and they develop into even greater players. I mean, I know being out there in Utah, There was Dak Moss, Huntley. I mean, those kids I recruited when I was at Louisville. Speaking of Louisville, I recruited Lamar Jackson, who's from South Florida, who went to Louisville. Yeah. I mean, it's just so many guys. You can't capture it like you used to. And now with the day of social media, you know, back then we didn't have the internet, so we didn't know what Utah had to offer or BYU had to offer. You know, it was just off of what maybe we were seeing on TV or maybe even read in an encyclopedia. But now you can do these virtual tours and all this other stuff. And plus now also there's money involved. There are trucks involved. There are all kind of things involved that only the privileged got to give out back then. But now everybody's involved in it. I mean, it's hard being down. I'm down here now, and I've watched my classmate Mario Cristobal do his recruiting out here, and guys are going here and guys are coming there, and you know it's like crisscrossing. It's incredible to watch. I mean, college football has developed into something that I got to be honest with you, I don't like. I mean, it's just it's crazy. It's like the Wild Wild West. Miami now has this money from COVID, from the hospitals that they spend. I mean, this quarterback that we have coming in, I think he might have got a lot. I want to say a couple M's behind his name to come here to the University of Miami, but that's not what college football should be about. It should be going to the place where you can, first of all, get the best education. Secondly, you know, what's best for you as a person individually, the program, and what you can get out of it as far as, you know, social aspects, you know, education-wise. I mean, where you can live after you graduate. That's why one of the reasons why I chose Miami, because I was like, hey, when I'm done playing football, and I wasn't thinking pros at the time. I was just thinking, hell, go there and catch a couple passes and you know, I'll graduate, and hell, I'd like to live in South Florida, you know. I definitely wouldn't like to live in Tuscaloosa, you know what I mean? So it's just these kids nowadays, it's a different game. You know, how can you yell at a kid? You know, being in coaching, I always look at it like, how can you yell at the kids? Say, hey, get your behind over here. You missing workouts. Get over here right now. And the kids are like, Coach, I can't come. My Tesla's not charged up. You know, it's all kind of different stuff going on, man. So it's crazy. This whole college football setting is just nuts now. And it's almost like I've had the privilege of being able to still do some broadcasting. And when I make out my charts, it's like, you got to say this kid is a transfer from here, or this kid transfer. I mean, behind every kid, there's like 2 or 3 places he might have transferred from. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, the whole thing is getting a great education. But I guess it's about how much money you can get paid and how much playing time you can get nowadays.
So I have to ask, because you were actually a late addition for us. We had a wide receiver coach. He left. He got another bigger job.
Yes.
So Dennis is calling you up and saying, hey, come join me in Salt Lake. What is going through your mind?
Well, first of all, when I had called him earlier when I knew he got the job, and he said he'd already promised to somebody else. And I was a little upset about that. I said, dang, Coach, you know I'm your guy. Yeah, you're like a son to me. And then he called me back a couple of weeks later and said, hey, come on. I said, are you freaking kidding me, Coach? I'm on the plane now. Let's go, baby. And I didn't know what the hell I was getting myself into coming out to Utah. Thanks to Michelle. She was like my tour guide out there. It was a very interesting place. I tell you what, it's very clean out there. Very clean. Very clean. And Michelle, you also helped me to the whole game of gymnastics. Now, since I have these daughters, matter of fact, I just left a gymnastics because my 2 girls participate in gymnastics. Got first place, by the way. Congratulations to Parker and Logan. But I remember that first game we had, I asked you, I said, why aren't the stands packed? And you said, because there's a gymnastics meet tonight. I said, what? Is gymnastics that big? You looked at me like, are you kidding me? I didn't know it was that big. And thanks to Michelle, I'm telling you, she was like a tour guide for us, telling us all about Utah. And I didn't even know it was that big until Michelle told me.
Now, Lamar, you obviously have spent time coaching in the college ranks. You most recently have spent time with Salt Lake Stallions. I believe last year with the Orlando Guardians in the XFL. What's next in your journey? Are you still hoping to get back into the coaching realm? What's next for you?
You know, it's almost one of those things where I'm kind of just sitting back going, you know, for years I've raised other people's kids. That's what coaching is. You're raising other people's kids, basically. I have my own little kids now. I mean, I'm 53 years old, and I have 4 younger kids. I have older kids, but I have younger kids, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So I'm not in a rush to spend the hours away from my family. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where, you know, you do so much trying to raise other people's kids, and some of them come in with a lot of deficiency in life. You know, they don't have father figures, or sometimes, you know, a lot of things going on in their lives. And so I just took a look at myself and said, I don't want to be one of those coaches who kids grow up without their father. So I'm trying to figure out what's the best avenue. I'm not really in a rush. I enjoyed coaching in the XFL because it was like 4 or 5 months, and then I got to come back home, and it was in Florida. So maybe I'll look for something down here, maybe not, who knows. I mean, maybe I'll continue in broadcasting, who knows. But, you know, I enjoy being a father to my younger kids and having girls, the 3 girls I have and the younger son. It is a 24/7 job, and I think that's what life should be about.
Talk about we had a lot of adventures in the short time that we were all together. Talk about what were some of your favorite memories from being here in Salt Lake, either running around with me or whoever in Salt Lake.
Well, I tell you this, you know, driving to practice every day, I got to learn a lot about from you, looking at the mountains, and I was, you know, I'm very terrified of mountain lions and all those things that could be out there to get you, and you made me feel at ease by telling me that, you know, no, don't, that's not going to happen here. And, you know, I enjoyed seeing the snow, the mountains. I even went up to Sundance. I went up there, and you know, they asked me if I wanted to ski, and I said no. I'll just sit at the bar and watch other people go to the hospital. I enjoyed the camaraderie of the coaching staff we had there. I enjoyed being around Coach Erickson. He's like a father to me, and to fulfill that dream of this guy who coached me at a younger age, and now I get to coach alongside him. I thought that was just an awesome thing, an awesome story to be able to tell all the guys that played for him that he's still the same guy. He is still the same guy. He's just a great man. It was just a lot of great. I wish they would have kept the Stallions. I thought it was a great thing out there in Utah. Utah is a beautiful place. You know, that's coming from a Floridian, a true Floridian, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, I just thought it was a great place. I didn't think that when I left after the BYU game, but it changed my heart getting to be out there for a couple of months. Well, it's a great place and a lot of great people, a lot of good, really good people out there.
Lamar Thomas joining us, and as you mentioned, he's a true Floridian. Were you born in like Ocala, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I was born in Ocala. Yes.
And then you went to high school there, went to Miami, and then obviously drafted by the Miami Dolphins, right?
Back up.
Okay.
I moved to Gainesville to go to high school in Gainesville, where the University of Florida is. Ocala is the horse capital of the world. I said that when I had my first interview with the University of Kentucky on a radio show, and all of a sudden the phone lines blew up and people were cursing me out. No wonder I didn't stay there that long. I didn't know that Ocala, there's a sign that says horse capital of the world. I grew up looking at this sign, but Kentucky has Lexington has the same sign. So I mean the people were cursing me out. Send them back to Louisville. But, so I wanted to throw that in there. But yeah, I grew up in Gainesville, and then I went to University of Miami. And then I was fortunate enough to be drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay.
Because we sucked. And then, of course, I played for the Miami Dolphins to finish off.
Yeah, so you say you're
True Floridian.
Yeah, you're a Florida guy through and through. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts. So with the XFL and the USFL merging here, they're going to create an 8-team league. What are your thoughts? Is spring football, because you said you would like to see the Stallions is still stuck around. Is spring football viable in your mind?
I think it is. I think what it does is give these guys an avenue, an opportunity to further their careers, to try to get more film. As we well know, what we see on Sundays is always not the best product because you can't tackle in practice. There are a lot of things you can't do. The linemen suffer. The defense suffers. A lot of things suffer in our game that we watch on Sundays because the rules have changed for safety measures. But these leagues give these guys opportunities to continue to develop and live, and it's living out their dreams. I mean, and you're getting paid. I think it's a great thing because we need a spring league. It's just like the G League for basketball. You know, having a spring league where guys can get opportunities, scouts can look at their film and say, okay, I didn't like this guy when he came out of college, but, you know, the 2 years that I watched him play in this spring league, I like him. Let's bring him into camp. That's what it's about.
So, Lamar, you kind of spoke about our road trips to practice. You always rode with me when we were in Salt Lake. Do you remember the time that we put together that the facility that we were in looked like the Partridge Family bus?
Oh, yeah. That sticks out in my mind, too, the Partridge Family. But was that the soccer
that was
facility? Yes.
Yeah, the soccer facility.
Yes, there was a Partridge Family bus. It's amazing. I felt bad for Michelle because I'm way older than Michelle, so Michelle probably was like, she probably had to Google Partridge Family. So
I did not. No, we sang the theme song. Like, that became a thing once we put that together. It was great.
Right. You're right. That's right. It was so fun out there, man. That was, you know, I wish that it would have at least made it a whole year. It's just a shame that it got cut off right in the middle of my special teams meeting.
Right.
I tell people the story. I tell people the story all the time that I had this deal with my guys. You can't be on your phones in my meetings, right? So I'm in front of the room talking about we were about to go to Atlanta that week, and I'm seeing guys on their phones. And finally, I said, "Hey guys, what's up with these phones?" And they said, "Coach, why are we meeting?" What do you mean why are we meeting? You're ready for Atlanta. They said the league's over. I said, you got to be kidding me. And everybody threw up their phones and showed me their phones. I'm like, oh, but I still didn't believe it until I looked out the window and I saw the bus pulling off. And I said, oh, it's real. We're going home.
I did not know that's how that ended for you. I was sitting on the outside at my desk, which was really a folding table, in the hallway, in the hallway of the hotel we were living in. And all of a sudden, everybody was starting to exit out of the rooms.
So I went.
So I had no idea what happened in your room. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was the craziest thing ever. And it was almost like 2 days and nobody knew what to do, you know, and at least the XFL let us finish the season before they cut teams off. You know, they merged 8 teams in the whole league, and then it was 8 teams left out from both leagues. So that's a lot of players, a lot of coaches, a lot of players. But, you know, as long as this thing survives, it's still going to be good for those players to be able to get that experience. And because, hey, why not stay here and play in the league than go to Canada, you know? Stay here, be around your family and friends, and we have TV coverage. Even though I'm not in the league this year, I'm just saying we. Yeah. It's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, and I heard that they're going to do it this year, 8 teams, and then try to expand. So it's going to get even better.
That's awesome. Well, Lamar, I want to thank you for taking some time. It's good to kind of get your perspective on things because we can out here in Utah we have a look at how things are. But you're a true Floridian, and it's good to hear that you enjoyed your time in Utah. And me and Michelle are selfish. We'd love to see like the new UFL as they're calling it now. Would love to see another franchise here in Salt Lake at some point down the road. But we'll have to kind of wait and see how it all plays out.
As long as they don't schedule the games on gymnastics.
Yes, they need to work. They need to realize, hey, hold on, we need to schedule some things. Yeah, no doubt. Well, Lamar, appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck in whatever's next, and really enjoy playing dad for the time being. It sounds like.
I will, and I continue to. I was just making a bagel for my daughter. And my phone was going off, and I'm like, who is this calling? I was like, oh, that's right. I'm supposed to do my interview with Michelle.
Hey.
So I remember, Michelle, I sat in gymnastics all morning. So my mind was focused on, being the dad that, says, hey, good job, but not too overly. I don't want them to feel, first place is great, but you got to keep going. You got to keep going. My one daughter's like, well, what's next, Dad? I got first place. I said, well, you got to string a couple of them in a row. Then I'll be happy.
Well, Lamar,
thank you guys
thanks
so
again.
much.
Have a great day, all right?
All right. Thank you.
There you go. Lamar Thomas. That was fun. He's a fun dude.
He was a character. Like, we hung out a lot.
I can tell.
We hung out a lot. We spent a lot of time together, which is actually kind of funny because he was a little leery of me when he first came on. So when we started the Stallions, there were some of the things coming out from the Utah Jazz. There were the racism issues.
Okay, yeah.
And so he heard I was from Utah, and he's like,
great.
yeah, great. Like, Dennis, who are you trying to, get me to associate with?
Sure.
And then he walked in on me. I was doing my workout because everybody was in bed, and I was listening to an Ice Cube playlist, and he's like, you like Ice Cube? I was like, I sure do.
That's awesome.
And he's like, you're not as bad as I thought you were.
Jeez.
So, friendship over Ice Cube. It's fine.
Well, there you go. Hey, do what you got to do, right?
Yeah. Well, whatever makes the friendship work. It's fine.
All right. We will come back on the other side. We'll get to some of the other topics we have not had a chance to get to quite yet on today's show. We like to call it 5 minutes of. That's coming up next right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Yeah. Get your ass up and hurry up. Ice Cube, baby. 99, baby.
Welcome back to the Saturday show. Jason pulled a good one here. Michelle mentioned she likes Ice Cube, and Jason delivers. So there you go. Hey, it's always good to have Ice Cube on the show. So welcome back. Hope you're doing well. Michelle Bodkin there. Jake Hatch here. Jason Jones behind the glass producing for us today. Hope you all are doing well on this Saturday. All right, Michelle, let's talk about some of the topics we haven't had a chance to talk about quite yet. But there was a report earlier this week from the Las Vegas Review-Journal saying that the Oakland Athletics, soon to be Las Vegas Athletics, they're looking for their interim home. Now, they're going to play in the Coliseum this year in Oakland, and then their lease is up. And the city of Oakland essentially wants nothing to do with them. They want essentially nothing to do with the city of Oakland. That's the way things stand,
Very
it feels
ugly.
like, out in the Bay Area. And they're looking at all options. And according to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, they had visited Sutter Health Field, which is the home field of the Sacramento River Cats, which are a AAA franchise. I believe they're the Giants affiliate out there in Sacramento. But then they were also going to be touring, wait for it, Salt Lake City and Smith's Ballpark.
All right.
So a lot of people are like, hold on, what's going on here? So let's see, pulling back the curtain a little bit here. The A's are building a new stadium in Las Vegas, but it's not going to be ready until 2028. Now, you heard me say this upcoming season, 2024, is their final in the Coliseum. Mm-hmm. Well, then there's 2025, 2026, and 2027. There's 3 seasons that are unaccounted for where the Athletics are going to call home. They're looking at all options. Well, then Steve Starks came on with Hans and Scotty G yesterday and said that, yes, the rumors are true. We actually hosted the Oakland Athletics yesterday. So he was on Friday talking about Thursday. They had come into town to check things out. And the appeal for Salt Lake is that currently the Salt Lake Bees are building their new facility out in Daybreak.
Yep.
It's supposed to be... It was originally slated for 7,500 fans, give or take. And according to what Steve was saying yesterday, should the Athletics pick that, they would actually play there. They'd play in Daybreak because it's got the bigger facility. It's got the locker rooms, the training facility. He says it's got Major League Baseball specifications.
That's about how many fans they drew in Oakland anyway. So,
Well, that's much more than they drew in Oakland. Good point. But they said that they could expand it out potentially to as many as 10 or 15,000. They said they're working on options like that. And essentially, so what it would be is that, yes, they'd open that new ballpark. If the A's were to pick it, they'd open it in time for 2025 opening day. The A's would call Daybreak home for the 3 seasons while they're building their stuff in Las Vegas. And then the Salt Lake Bees would stay at Smith's Ballpark for another 3 seasons.
Interesting.
Which, in my mind, this is like if I'm the A's, it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Because you can have your own ballpark. You're not having to share. Because if you go to Sutter Health out there in Sacramento, where are the River Cats going to play? Oh, yeah, they're playing there as well.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to work around 2 different schedules, scheduling PCL games alongside with Major League Baseball. There was some thought that I still call it Oracle a ballpark. I don't know, is it AT&T, whatever the Giant Stadium is out there in San Francisco.
Yeah.
There was some thought that they may share that. I don't think Major League Baseball wants to have to deal with that logistical nightmare of like, all right, we've got a series starting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then crossover Wednesday night to just.
Yeah.
If they can do it, and if the A's are comfortable with it, get them here to Salt Lake City, because there's one added side benefit to this. I'll get your thought on this in just a minute. It would allow Salt Lake City, which wants a Major League Baseball franchise, Big League Utah, that consortium of decision makers is really pushing this. It's a test run.
Totally.
Why would Major League Baseball want to come in here, see how it does, which I think it would just do awesome, even if it is capped at 15,000 fans, whatever. I think it would be a great, great thing because it gives MLB a look at what Salt Lake is as a potential franchise of their own, and it gives the Oakland A's, or they call themselves the Las Vegas A's, and I don't know what they're called. Call themselves the Athletics.
I was going to say they're probably just going to be the Athletics for the time being.
But they get a home of their own for the 3 seasons while they figure out what they're doing in Vegas.
No, I think there's a lot of benefit to that. And that's something where when we did the spring league, that went wrong. There just wasn't a lot of backing behind it. I think we were the last team that was kind of put together.
Sure.
So, why not bring in an already established franchise? Obviously, this is not their permanent home, but they have a name brand. They already exist. They already have the fan base. And just see how they do in the area. And then if it goes great, once they move along, then create your own team to then implant in this city and have it be theirs. But I think that's just awesome. I think that's so cool. I'm a little disappointed that they're talking about going out to Daybreak because there's not a chance I will ever catch a game. But
I'll admit, I'm totally okay if the A's want to go to Daybreak.
It's closer for you.
For me, Michelle, I'm on the west side of Salt Lake of Utah Valley.
Yeah.
I'm on Redwood Road, and I drive over the hill. There's Mountain View Corridor. I zip on out, and I could be there in 15 minutes. So for me,
it's convenient.
It's great. And you know what? There's a lot of people who were beyond upset when the Bees announced they were going to Daybreak. And I can understand. Trust me, I understand why. I get it. Like, there's an established
place.
You go 13th South. It's a great venue. The old Dirks Field was rebranded. Now it's Smith's Ballpark. It's been a great, great venue. But it's not up to Major League Baseball specifications.
Right.
So in many ways, it makes a lot of sense to keep the Bees there. And then, as you mentioned, if it works out, which I believe it would do great
I think
here.
it'll do well.
And then they have that 100-acre piece of land, the Power District, as they're calling it, right out there on I-80. That's the big push at that point. Then, okay, if they do well with the A's, then Major League Baseball sees it, and then they can announce, hey, Salt Lake City's one of our expansion franchises. They break ground there at the Power District, and maybe by the time the A's are heading to Vegas, you're well on your way to getting the Salt Lake whatever they're going to be called established, or the Utah whatever they're going to be called.
Yeah.
It seems, I don't know, I'm this guy. I'm one guy who's from Utah who wants to see Major League Baseball here. It makes way too much sense to me. And the timeline for it's got to happen. And Jason over there, Jason's all in on this
Jason's
too.
all in.
But it's got to happen on a pretty quick timeline as well, because the Major League Baseball schedule for 2025 comes out typically in July. They got 6 months to figure this out. And Steve Stark said, we will be ready for opening day 2025 if that's what they opt to do. And they've already said that the Bees were going to play there in 2025. So they've got to be ready by early spring. The timeline seems to work out where it's a very, very, I think, advantageous proposal for all parties involved with this.
Yeah, it's so cool, and it feels like it just kind of came out of left field
in some ways.
To use a baseball term, you know.
Well, it did, because all of a sudden the Las Vegas Review-Journal's like, they're obviously tracking the A's because they're going to Las Vegas, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, they're touring this facility in Sacramento. Oh no, they're going to Salt Lake City, and everyone, what? Salt Lake,
like, wait,
huh?
what?
But it makes too much sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. The only thing that a little is the weather.
Sure, and
but I mean, outside of that. I just think baseball is such a family-friendly sport, and we love doing family-friendly things here.
Yeah. Well, Jason's wearing a Boston hat, and if Boston can do their thing with an outdoor venue in Fenway, Salt Lake can deal with the weather issues we'd have here as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to work some extra shifts so I can go to some games, no doubt.
You and me both. Yeah, because trust me, I will be making the trip out to the daybreak
many
often.
times, yes.
It's just, if I get the Seattle Mariners here, because that's my team.
That's your team.
If Salt Lake were to get a Major League Baseball franchise, sorry, Seattle, but I'm jumping ship.
Been nice knowing you, but...
Well, I've had some certain media members here locally have told me I should forsake that franchise many, many times over.
Well,
they happen to work in Seattle before this. I think if you do some deductive reasoning, you can figure out who they told me that. But.
Yeah, but you can't abandon your team, man. It's your team that you grew up with.
Come on,
you know?
If I get a hometown team here in Salt Lake,
well, that's true. But I mean, you grew up with them. It's really hard to abandon that.
Not with the Mariners. Okay,
fair enough.
But anyways, I think it'd be really cool. We'll see what happens. There still needs to be decisions made, obviously, but it seems in my mind to be like, and it's almost like a no-brainer. Like, you get it. It'd be a brand new facility for the A's to call home for 3 years. It's a test run for the Salt Lake market with Major League Baseball, and oh, by the way, it brings extra money into just the state of Utah and Salt Lake City in general
for a couple of years. Yeah, no, I love it. And again, I think we've talked about with the possibility of bringing in an NHL team, the possibility of doing an MLB team. It just opens up the job market a lot more for this industry as well. And there's a lot of, I think, up-and-coming talent that just doesn't really have a place to go. And so from that standpoint, I think, bringing in something like that would be huge. Do you want to hear my timeline of how I think things work out? Yeah, let's hear it. So I think in the next, because they're going to have to make that decision on the A's pretty quick. So I think that happens in the next 2 to 3 months. They're just going to have to, you got to buckle down and figure out what you're doing there. Now, we've heard that the Olympics, the Salt Lake is the preferred host for the 2034 games. And that's what the IOC is using. They're going to officially vote on that later this year, if I'm not mistaken, to make that official. I'm expecting, and I'm not reporting this, I'm going to be very clear about this. This is just in Jake's mind how it works out, that sometime after that official announcement of the 2034 Olympic Games happens, like the city of Salt Lake City, you remember the whole Juan Antonio Samaranch thing? That happens again with the official announcement. Shortly thereafter, I think there's going to be an announcement that prison land down there in Draper, there's going to be a multi-purpose venue built with the idea of it being hockey specifically built for hockey, and for the Olympics to have the hockey events there, and then by the way, Garrett Bettman's in town saying, "Please welcome Salt Lake City with a brand new franchise for the National Hockey League." And this is not happening in like months. I'm talking about this is probably over a couple of years here. But that's the timeline I think is happening, because you have the A's make that announcement, which would I think signal to other pro leagues like, okay, Salt Lake's doing some things here. Then you get that venue announced. Then NHL's like, yeah, we're in on that as well, and then we're off and rolling. Love it. Because to your point, it opens up a lot of sports media opportunities here locally. Because yes, I talked to a number of younger sports professionals, and I consider myself still very young, even though I'm in my mid-30s. Yeah. But I talked to them, and they're like, well, what are my prospects? And I'm like, well, that's the big question. Where can you find a foothold? Getting more teams, MLB, NHL, that opens that whole door. It opens up new opportunities, and it keeps some of that homegrown talent as you talk about. You can keep them here. Yeah. And we're talking opportunities from like internships, all the way up to obviously like full-time decent paying
PR,
gigs. Yeah.
actual like being the broadcasters, writing about the team. It opens a whole avenue. That's just the sports media realm. By the way, people need to run those venues. There are grounds crews. There's. It's Jason's over. Sign me up.
I'm in.
I've told my wife at times if I were to go back and do college all over again, I'd actually study landscape management. I'd go and like do specifically for like ball fields.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. Like grass, like I don't know, it sounds weird, but like because the science that goes into playing surfaces.
Oh, I'm sure it's insane.
It's nuts.
I'm sure it's insane. It's not like Joe Blow Schmo trying to keep his lawn green in the front yard.
No.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if any of you, if you've been on an actual ball field, like you can go over to the Salt Lake Bees facility and like when they have those fireworks games, they'll let you go on the field sometimes for it. That grass is immaculate. And by the way, it's cut like
perfect.
It's awesome.
And it's like thin and
Yes.
it's soft and yeah.
It's great. It's the same thing with Real Salt Lake over there at America First Field. It's so yeah. In a different world, Jake is on a grounds crew somewhere, cutting that grass with that little hand cutter,
With
making
his
sure it's
little,
perfect.
little hand tweezers.
Making sure it's that's a half inch out of it. Nope. Anyways, but
Dork.
I am a dork. My wife tells me all the time. I'm lucky enough that my dorkdom, I guess as I call it, pays the bills these days.
Why not?
That's the name of the game. All right. I'm going to talk about some other things. Let's talk college hoops next. I want to get some of your thoughts on the Utes. We'll get to that next as we wrap up this edition of the Saturday Show right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday Show here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jason's been hitting the hits today. It's been great. East Coast versus West Coast, rap battle back and forth. It's been pretty fun. But Michelle Bodkin, Jay Catch, wrapping things up on this edition of the Saturday Show. And Michelle, before we go, I want to talk a little bit about college basketball. Utah women last night, big win. Frankly, they just stomped USC, which was really, really impressive.
Yeah, they were so impressive. I really just out the gate, they had an edge, a chip to them that, quite frankly, has been missing. Even when they still had Gianna Neepkins in the lineup, even when they still had Izzy Palmer, which Izzy Palmer made her return,
She's back, yeah.
and looked overall pretty good. A little rusty, but to be expected. And I think she's going to be a huge boost to what they do down the stretch. But they just. It's like they were good, but like they weren't as chippy as they had been the previous year. Even though a good portion of that team returned.
Yes.
And then you kind of make it worse with the injuries and having to bring in people that weren't kind of a part of that. And so they're working on getting their feet wet, getting themselves wrapped around what the role is. And it feels like the 3 games prior to that, so that would have been Arizona, Stanford, and Cal. And obviously Arizona and Stanford were losses. But it felt like you were kind of starting to see like light bulb moments.
Sure.
Things were clicking. Yeah. And then it felt like it all just really, really came together again in that game last night.
And we'll see if they can roll it forward here because they got UCLA coming in on Monday, which is another big test.
Yep.
Like it's similar in the Pac-12 women's sphere. It's similar to the men's Big 12 sphere.
It's just everybody's good.
Yeah,
everybody's good. You don't get a break.
Yeah, you said what time is that on Monday? Is it 5?
5 p.m.
Interesting. So get up to the Huntsman Center. Also, you can do that tomorrow as well. The Utah men. Now, Oregon State is awful.
Oregon State's not good.
But Oregon, coming off their first loss of Pac-12 play, is going to be a little more, PO'd when it comes to going against Utah. They're going to want to get some payback. But that one's at 1 o'clock tomorrow at the Huntsman Center. Should be an interesting game because the way that Keba Keita played in particular against Oregon State, I was really, really impressed. That kid is just, you feel like he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. Now, what's the status with Rolly Wooster and Lawson Lovering? Have you heard anything more?
Craig said afterwards in postgame they don't expect them for Sunday.
Okay.
But after that, it's fuzzy. They don't know. Okay. So it's kind of it sounds like Utah football all over again. These guys are injured. We know they'll be back at some point. When they're back, I don't know.
Uno Doctor.
It might be. I don't know. We should maybe ask Craig. Is it Uno Doctor?
Yeah.
But I thought they handled that situation really well, and it could have totally gone sideways for him. Easily could have gone sideways for him. But I thought they came together really well. I think Davon Smith has been a big boost to what they've been doing. He and Kaba usually capture my attention just because of the things that they can do. And then, of course, you have Brandon Carlson that can pop off at any moment. And, it's nice seeing that they don't have to rely on him so heavily, that there are others now on that roster that can kind of pick up some slack. It's just, I think those three are working really well together, and they're getting things done. Now, they got to figure out how to get a win or two on the road. Yes. But at home, they've been very, very good.
Well, and that's a similar circumstance for BYU, because BYU, they get the big win over Iowa State Tuesday. This afternoon, they play at Texas Tech, who's 25th. And then, by the way, there's this team called Houston, who's top 3 in the country, comes to Provo on Tuesday. Michelle, this is the first time since 1981 that BYU has played 3 straight ranked opponents. Woof. 81 was Danny Ainge's heyday at BYU. It's been a minute since BYU's played this level of competition, but you do have to learn how to pick up road wins. Mm-hmm. BYU got a big one against UCF. It was ugly down the stretch against UCF last week.
Win's a win.
A win is a win. You got to take them any way you can get them in conference play. Utah State learned that lesson in New Mexico on was that Wednesday night? No, it was Tuesday night as well. It was late night. They lose in the pit to the Lobos. That snapped a 15-game winning streak for Utah State. We got some good local hoops going on here, so it's going to be interesting. You got to see if Utah can handle Oregon tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Got to see if BYU can go to Texas Tech today. It's a 4:00 tip on ESPN2. Looking forward to that. And then it's coming up at 1:30. It'll be pregame for Utah State. They're taking on Fresno State. That should be a relative layup because Fresno's not that great. I've watched them play against BYU, and let's just put it this way, BYU was just kind of toying with them the entire game. It wasn't close.
Yeah. So
it should be a pretty easy win there. So big weekend ahead, but those road wins, you got to learn how to get them. And any you get, so big. It sets you up because conference play, these teams have you scouted really, really well. Utah, they know that teams have got them scouted. And we had Craig Smith on with DJ and PK Wednesday morning, and he talked a lot about Davon Smith. He thinks that Davon Smith is kind of like their ace in a hole. And I think what he means by that is, to your point, he didn't play a lot in the non-conference because of the whole situation with the transfer and everything. So teams have got Brandon Carlson scouted. They got Keba Keita on film. They've got an idea of what those guys can do. Davon Smith, in some ways, is still a mystery in terms of figuring out what his whole thing is. And Craig Smith even said it himself. We're still learning what he can do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's incredible. It's been a while since Utah's had kind of a smaller speedster like that. Thinking about a Justin Bibbins or Brandon Taylor.
I hadn't even thought of Justin Bibbins
back in the day. He's a little bit bigger than both of those guys. And I think he's actually more athletic than both of them too. But he just plays so fast and will come out of nowhere and make something happen. And he was a little tentative at first, which again makes sense. You haven't played for a while. Getting the feel for how the team works and the dynamic works. But he's been thrust into that starting spot now with Raleigh Wooster out. And, he's been lights out. He's been so good.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's going to be a fun weekend. And obviously we'll track your work at KSLSports.com and we'll keep our eye on all of it. That's the fun part about this. We'll be back next week here on the Saturday show, and also keep it locked right here on the Zone all week long. Starting Monday morning, DJ and Peak will have you covered live programming throughout the day, and obviously a lot going on: jazz, college hoops, NFL. We got it all for you guys, and maybe baseball at some point. Maybe
that might be on the docket.
Let's make it happen. I want that so badly. Be great. All right. So for Jason and Michelle, have a great rest of your Saturday, everybody. This has been the Saturday Show right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.